Breaking news! Something big may be happening behind the scenes in Baltimore, and if what people around the league are saying is true, the Ravens may be closer than anyone imagined to making a change that could completely transform the team's defense. Right now, there are rumors, news, and a lot of speculation, but one thing is certain, upcoming events could surprise many people in the NFL world. But before we get into the details of everything that's happening, don't forget to like this post if you believe the Ravens are building a team strong enough to contend for the Super Bowl. And I want to see the true Ravens fans chime in the comments, write something optimistic for the team, something like, "Go Ravens!" The best is yet to come, because this fan base knows how to believe even when the rest of the league doubts Baltimore. At first, many fans believed it might just be wishful thinking. Ravens fans have seen this story before. A big name becomes available, rumors begin linking the Ravens to that player, the fan base gets excited, and then eventually the move never happens. The Ravens have built a reputation for monitoring opportunities around the league, but not always pulling the trigger on blockbuster deals. Even EDC has said in the past that he keeps tabs on almost every player that becomes available. So when early whispers connected the Ravens to Max Crosby, many people assumed it was simply another case of Baltimore doing its homework. But now the situation feels different. A new report from Diana Reedy says that Max Crosby is drawing serious interest around the league, and two teams in particular are being closely watched, the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Ravens. The Cowboys have reportedly been monitoring the situation very closely, and many around the league initially believed they were the favorites to land Crosby. On the surface, that might make sense because Dallas is known for making loud offseason moves and dominating headlines every year. However, there are still questions about whether that path truly makes sense for them, especially considering previous roster moves involving Micah Parsons. Some observers believe bringing Crosby in right after that type of situation would feel like a strange sequence of decisions. Still, what makes this report particularly interesting for Ravens fans is that Baltimore was specifically mentioned as a team to watch. That alone is enough to turn heads. And when respected voices like Jeff Rebick amplify that report, it sends a message that this might be more than just speculation. For Ravens fans who are constantly tracking every rumor and update, it immediately raises the stakes. Now the real question becomes, what would it actually take to make this happen? There have been discussions around the league about possible trade packages. At one point, there were reports that the Cowboys might be willing to offer a first-round pick and additional assets. If that's the kind of market the Raiders are looking at, the big question for Baltimore becomes whether they would be willing to compete at that level. Historically, the Ravens are not known for giving up first-round picks in trades. That has never really been their strategy. Instead, they've typically made smart, lower-risk moves that strengthen the roster without sacrificing major draft capital. Think about some of the recent trades Ravens fans remember. The move for Marcus Peters came at a relatively low cost. The acquisition of Calais Campbell didn't require a massive package. The same goes for the trade involving Yannick Ngakoue. These were strong additions that helped the team, but none of them were the kind of blockbuster deal that shakes the entire league. Adding Max Crosby would be different. This would be a headline move. This would be the kind of acquisition that immediately changes how people view the Ravens' defense. And that's why fans are both excited and cautious at the same time. Ravens supporters have experienced the emotional roller coaster of the almost RAVENS list for years. Big names linked to Baltimore, big hopes building, and then ultimately the player ends up somewhere else. Over the last 5 or 6 years alone, there have been plenty of players who nearly became Ravens but never actually did. So now the entire situation may come down to a few key factors. What are the Raiders really asking for? Are the Ravens willing to break from their usual approach and make a bold move? And perhaps most importantly, what does Max Crosby himself want when he looks at potential destinations? If Crosby studies the Ravens roster, he would see a team with serious talent. He would see Dak Prescott leading the Cowboys on one side of the conversation. But on the Ravens side, he would see explosive weapons like Zay Flowers and a defense that already features players like Travis Jones and Nnamdi Matabike. Adding an elite edge rusher to that group could completely change the pressure Baltimore generates up front. But the Cowboys also bring their own appeal. They have the spotlight, the national attention, and even multiple first-round picks in the upcoming draft, including pick number 12 and pick number 20. That kind of draft capital gives them a potential advantage if a bidding war begins. So now Ravens fans are watching and waiting. The next 48 hours could determine whether this turns into one of the biggest moves in recent Baltimore history, or just another name added to the long list of players who almost became Ravens. And when you really start thinking about the possibilities, this situation becomes even more fascinating for Ravens fans. Because if the Baltimore Ravens were somehow able to land Max Crosby, we wouldn't just be talking about adding another good player. We would be talking about adding a true difference maker to a defense that has already shown flashes of being one of the most dangerous units in the league. The biggest conversation around Baltimore's defense in recent seasons has always circled back to the same point. The team has talent across the board, but the pass rush hasn't always been as dominant as fans would like it to be. That's exactly why the idea of Crosby in purple and black creates so much excitement. Think about the way this defense could change overnight. Max Crosby is the type of player who forces offensive coordinators to change their entire game plan. He doesn't just rush the passer, he creates chaos in the backfield and disrupts running plays as well. According to the discussion around his availability, one of the biggest reasons teams are so interested in him is because he's not just a situational pass rusher. He's a complete defensive weapon who can stay on the field and impact every down. Now imagine pairing that type of relentless edge presence with the defensive pieces Baltimore already has. Suddenly quarterbacks would be under pressure far more consistently. Offensive lines would have to shift protection. That opens opportunities for other defenders to make plays. And that's exactly how elite defenses are built, not just with one star player, but with multiple threats that force offenses into impossible decisions. But this is where the front office faces its biggest dilemma. The Ravens have always believed strongly in the draft. Their philosophy has been clear for years: build through smart drafting, develop talent internally, and avoid sacrificing major draft capital unless the move truly makes sense. That strategy is one of the reasons Baltimore has remained competitive for so long. Year after year, they find players who contribute and help keep the roster balanced. So if the Raiders are truly willing to work on a deal, the Ravens would have to decide how far they're willing to go. Because if other teams, especially a team like Dallas, are offering first-round picks, Baltimore might need to step outside its comfort zone to stay in the conversation. That's something we rarely see from this organization. Historically, when trade situations start escalating into bidding wars, the Ravens tend to step back rather than overpay. And that's exactly why fans are watching this so closely right now. This moment feels like a crossroads. On one side, you have the Ravens' traditional approach: patience, draft capital, long-term planning. On the other side, you have a rare opportunity to bring in one of the most disruptive defenders in football. If there was ever a time to make a bold move, some fans believe this might be it. But there's another factor that could influence everything, and that's Max Crosby himself. At the end of the day, players often have a say in where they want to go. If Crosby and his camp start evaluating potential destinations, they'll look at more than just contracts or trade packages. They'll look at the roster, the coaching staff, the defensive scheme, and most importantly, the chance to compete for a championship. When he studies the Ravens, he would see a team that was already close. He would see a roster that isn't far away from making a serious Super Bowl run. That kind of opportunity can sometimes matter just as much as market size or media attention. And that's why this story is far from finished. Right now, Ravens fans across the internet are refreshing their timelines, watching every update, and waiting to see whether Baltimore will actually make a move. Some fans are cautious, remembering all the almost Ravens situations in the past. Others are allowing themselves to imagine what it would look like if this deal actually happened. Because if it does, it could instantly become one of the most talked about trades in recent Ravens history. So now it comes down to patience. The next developments could happen quickly, and if Baltimore truly is one of the main teams in the mix, the decision might come sooner rather than later. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you love talking Ravens football, and check out the next video on your screen because we'll be breaking down every new update as this story develops. But I want to hear from you first, Ravens flock. If the Ravens actually pull this off and bring Max Crosby to Baltimore, how big of an impact do you think he would have on this defense next season?